this moment where you're with a crowd, especially for stand up, that there's like a real silence in the room. And that real silence just means that everybody, to me at least, is aware of the show. They're like all really present in the moment.
Hi, I'm Zack Newmark, and this is Damn Yankee. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe on YouTube for all the best interviews with the top performers based here in Amsterdam and those traveling through the Netherlands. Deshawn Mason has been delighting audiences for over 13 years as a performer. Whether that be through stand-up, improv, or magic, Deshawn has found a way to bring the most of himself to the stage. Becoming one of the current cast members at Boom Chicago has given Deshawn the opportunity to explore the world. Come see a show and afterwards ask him to show you a magic trick is what he says. And what I'd say is, do you have a magic trick for me?
Yeah. What's my magic trick? I do cards. So I'm a card magician.
You've magically produced a deck of cards from your pocket.
That's right. I always have a deck of cards on me. So here's what I'll have you do. I want you to think of a card.
Okay.
And then you're going to name it out loud.
Okay.
And then I'll show you a magic trick.
8 of spades.
The 8 of spades.
The 8 of spades.
That's great. Now, you could have said anything. And one of my favorite things about magic, it's really about like coincidence, you know? And when you're thinking about coincidences, often they just start nice and simply. So you just do me a favor. Can you take a look at the top card?
Okay. So I will grab the deck. Okay.
And I'm going to ask you a question about that card.
Okay.
Is that your card?
That is absolutely my
That's
card.
the 8 of spades right there on top where you needed it. See? And that's a coincidence.
Okay.
All right. Now, here's the thing. I admittedly do have a couple of 8 of spades in here. So I'm just going to fan through like that. You tell me where to stop, okay?
Okay.
Wherever you think.
All right. Stop.
Right there. Okay, great. And then take a peek. And is that your card?
That is also my 8 of spades.
And you see, no, wait. There was actually just that one. I just had that one 8 of spades.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's super cool. How long have you been doing that?
I've been doing magic since I was a kid. I was, I think like around 6 or 7. I had an uncle who showed me a magic trick one time, and then I just kept doing it.
Yeah.
And then after I started doing comedy, people like to see it more. But it wasn't until I moved to Chicago that it really like took hold of my performance life.
Well, so what is that kind of what you would consider to be your way into performing in the first place? Was doing magic or card tricks?
I'd say stand-up. I'd say stand-up for sure. I started doing stand-up, when I was like 20. And before that, I hadn't ever performed. So I hadn't like done plays, no magic like on stage or anything like that, mostly just for friends close up.
And you didn't do, performances in high school or theater camp or anything like that?
Nope. I did like track and field. So I was captain of my cross country team in high school. Not because I was the fastest. I was just very charismatic. I always had to say, I'm like, don't ask me my times. But I ended up getting into comedy via stand-up. And then after that, people would ask me to come do like other stuff. So a friend asked me to do improv for the first time. And I was like, oh, sure. Yeah, why not? And then that friend reached out to me one day and he was like, hey, somebody saw one of our shows and wants you to come audition for a play. And then I started doing theater. And then that just like kept going. And then I started traveling around for stand-up. Started like doing hour-long sets and like featuring places, doing comedy festivals. And then after lockdown, I moved to Savannah, Georgia, where my friends had opened an improv theater, and then just like really got super into improv there. Then went to Chicago, and then in Chicago I met Mick Napier, who's the owner of the Nuanced Theater and also a fantastic magician.
Right.
And he gave me like, we use the same style of magic. The technique that I was using was like designed sometime around like the 1920s, and it just turned out that he was a big fan of this Spanish magician named Juan Tamariz. And he told me, he was like, hey, you should look this guy up. I think that you'll like his stuff. And I read one of his books and it blew my mind. And then after that, it was like, it felt like almost over the course of a week as I was reading the book, I could feel like the change happening. And then after that, I was just a very different magician.
So just bring me back a little bit, because you didn't grow up in Georgia. You didn't grow up in Chicago. You grew up in North Carolina.
I'm actually from New York originally.
You're from New York.
Yeah. So I was born in New York, ended up moving to South Carolina around like 7 or 8.
Okay. And where do you kind of consider yourself to be from?
I'd say probably the East Coast is what I'm saying now for since I'm like in the Netherlands. But honestly, I think I've been like part of comedy scenes for so long, like that it feels like that's really the only place that I like consider home. Like if I go to travel to the States now, it's like less to go see my mom who lives in Virginia or my sister who lives in South Carolina. It's more like, okay, which comedy scene am I going to go like
Right.
sit and relax in for a bit?
Um, I take it you did sort of all of your, you know, young education. Was that
South Carolina.
all in South Carolina? And, you know, so growing up there, you know, I mean, you must have had a feeling like, did you have a sense of being a performer in some way?
Actually, I put it to a friend of mine, a guy named Christian Valentine. He in high school, he kept saying to me, he was like, Deshawn, you could be a stand-up comedian. You're really funny. And I was also not great at school. And I do remember one specific day, he's like, Deshawn, you're bad at school. You do this stuff. You kind of living like every comedian's life up to this point. And then I started like writing down jokes and like I would say things in conversation. And then I kept this like sheet of paper in my wallet that had a set list. And I updated it over the course of like, I want to say like 2 years or something like that. And then eventually a guy wandered into the Hollister that I was working at, this clothing store. And he was like, hey, I'm a comedian and I need pants. I got a show this weekend. And I was like, hey, that's crazy. And I asked him if there was like any open mics. And there was one that night hosted by Dusty Slay, who now is like a huge performer in the States.
So how old were you at that time?
That was 20.
Okay. Why did it take you, that many years, however many years it was, 2 years working on that little set list, maybe sometime after your friends were convincing you were funny? Why did it take you so much time to actually kind of get up on stage that first time?
I think it was just about knowing where the open mics were. I remember one, like right away, I did like a little bit of research and it told me about a theater that there was an open mic at, but it was like a real like playhouse. So I was like an open mic for something else. So I think I did go, but then it wasn't comedy. So then I didn't end up getting the chance to perform. But 2 years later, when that guy came in and mentioned he was a comedian, that was the first time I had run into somebody who was actively doing the thing. So it just happened to be that he was performing with the guy who was hosting the open mic. So,
and you're 33. I mean, you grew up in the internet age. You could have jumped online to search for open mics. Was that never a thing? Never on your radar to do?
I did do like the Googling, and that's how I found out about the one that was at the Playhouse. It's just when you look up open mics in Charleston, you have like a lot of like poetry slams, music open mics, and you have a smaller comedy scene than you do in like most other cities. So it just wasn't the first thing that came up.
Right.
Yeah.
Was this something that was kind of surprising to other people in your life? Because you had this one friend who was, clearly on your side as a comedian, maybe not on your side as a student, but supportive as a comedian. What was your family's reaction to, you sort of jumping into this?
I want to say that my family was pretty supportive. I think like when I think of my core family, it's like pretty much just me, my mom, my sister. They've always been pretty supportive. When I first started doing comedy, I do remember I was also thinking about joining the military. I was going to like join the Air Force and I'd gotten through about to go to basic training. So my mom was very excited about that. And when it came time to sign the papers, I kind of like backed off and I was like, I don't know, I think I kind of want to do comedy. And my mom, gotta give her credit, was like, okay, I suppose if that's what you want to try. But we kind of like came up with a deal that by the time I was 22, if I didn't know what I was doing with my life, then I would go and join the military. So then, I was doing comedy. I started going to college a little bit, just like a tech school, nothing too serious. And then like, I remember a week before my 22nd birthday, I probably was like walking around like a zombie and trying to avoid her. And she like just caught me in the like living room and was like, hey, I don't know if doing comedy is a good idea, but if you think it is, then it's okay if you just want to try to focus on that. And so then I did. Then I just started doing lots and lots of it, and like the stand up was going well, and I was traveling around, and yeah, having like nice little successes and different things like that. But it's certainly changed a lot in the last like few years, where like now sometimes when I talk to my mom on the phone, she says, she's like, "You were right, I was wrong." She's like, and I hate to admit that. But yeah, I think it's currently really cool to be like doing this and like living in Amsterdam. Like even talking to my sister, she said that she doesn't know anybody who has a job that has brought them overseas, and it just happens to be that it's her brother for comedy, which is insane.
Kind of wild to think about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is your sister funny?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, the whole fam's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me what that was like growing up. I mean, were you the funny one, or were you the sort of observational one absorbing their funny?
I probably more observational. I like to. I know a thing about me is I usually like to like sit back and I'm very chill, so I just watch a lot. But yeah, I usually like to say my mom is the funny one in the family. She really like loves talking to people, and like you know, she's the person at the grocery store who like makes a friend immediately. She knows everybody in the neighborhood. She's like going to hang out, and like you can just see like how much like how gregarious she is, how much she loves to like talk to people. And I'd say that that's like also true of my sister. She's got 2 kids. She works at school in South Carolina, and she really loves it. And yeah, as we're like talking, I think it's kind of interesting because talking to my sister, she's kind of become my confidant. So if I need advice or anything, I call her. But like over the years, I've told her as I'm like teaching improv and like learning about comedy, I'll tell her like my view on things. And every once in a while, like she'll like reference something from earlier in our conversation, and it gets a laugh out of me. And she's like, "See, I'm paying attention. I know what a callback is." So I'm sure at her school, she's destroying.
Walk me through what brought you, to Georgia in the first place.
Yeah. So I was doing stand up. And yeah, like doing stand up, doing a little bit of improv and acting and all sorts of stuff. My friends had an improv theater in Savannah called Front Porch Improv. They had been like friends for a while. I had been coming down to do the Savannah Comedy Festival, me and a buddy. And during 2020, after lockdown had lifted in South Carolina and Georgia, which was very fast, I was in a 4-year relationship. We broke up. And literally like we break up, I'm walking outside just to take like a breather, and I get a phone call from my buddy in Savannah, and he's like, "Hey, we have a show this weekend, and we were wondering if you could like come slide through." And I was like, I could certainly come for the weekend. And then I'm like, "Yeah, I also just broke up." And he was like, "Oh my gosh, when did that happen?" I was like, 5 minutes ago. And he's like, "Do you need work?" And I was like, "Do you think you could help me find work?" And he was like, "I think I could help you find work." And the next day I was driving down, and I got onto a phone call with 3 owners of the theater, and they were like just spitballing ideas. So then I started living with 2 of them, a married couple, and then they got me a job doing like these food tours. So then I just started coming down every weekend, and then I moved there, and then yeah, had this like meeting with them where I didn't know how long I was going to be in Savannah. I thought like I was probably going to go to New York pretty soon. And they asked me like what I wanted while I was at the theater. And I said, I think the way that they did improv was just really different than anything I had seen before. And I just wanted to learn more. And yeah, I was like willing to perform as much as possible for that. And they said yes. So
what set their improv apart from what you had, what you had known to that point?
I think it was there's like a few different styles of thought about improv, but I think that there's like a UCB like more game focused style of improv where like part of what makes it funny is the skill and talent of the performers to like drive towards jokes, and then there's like a slightly different style of approach where it's like through like vulnerability and humanity that you like kind of like explore like who you are, and that like gives like more like artistic expression in some ways. And I just hadn't seen people approach it in like such a like free and open way, like asking me like more about who I was and like what it meant to like live and how do you like continue to do these things. Whereas before, without like a ton of training for me as well, it seemed like as a stand-up comedian, my skill was to make things funny. So when I was doing improv, I was like very good at making things funny, but to explore like story and like the art and like what does it mean to be alive, I don't think that I was necessarily even aware that that was an option for improv.
What was the format of that improv? Is that
We ended up doing like a lot of like long form, but I think it's less about necessarily the format. It's just like what does the performer personally want to approach,
Mhm.
and I think that's like kind of where it comes down. But at that theater, we did short form, we did lots of long forms. So we did like I could maybe like 4 or 5 or 6 different types of long form, and then we usually produce like let's say 4 or 5 different shows every month where they're doing shows, and then I'm teaching and still doing stand up here and there, and like just working on my skill set to like just explore more.
So how old were you at that point that you moved to Savannah?
That was 29. I turned 30 in Savannah, so that was just I moved to Savannah at the end of 2020.
Okay. And I mean, you moved there with, had you even taken like an improv class at that point?
I had taken 2 improv classes.
Mhm.
I took a level 1 improv class in Charleston at Theater 99. And then I ended up years later taking a level 4 improv class at Theater 99. They had they had an open space, and they decided that they wanted to try to like invest in me as a performer. So then they offered the class, and I was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And it broke my brain.
What was so sort of revolutionary for you about it?
I think it was kind of felt like when you're like going to school, I think the closest way that I remember feeling about it was I remember in college, I hadn't taken like algebra or like I hadn't taken calculus, but my grades, like my testing scores were good enough that they dropped me into a trig class. So I went from like calculus to trig, and there's like a lot of stuff, or algebra to trig. There's like a lot of stuff that you're supposed to learn in the middle about like how to handle these like larger concepts.
Mhm.
But I got dropped in, and I was like, I don't know what any of this means. So when I was doing the level 4 class, it did kind of feel like there was a lot of things that I think the teacher expected me to have, and I just didn't even know that this was like stuff that I could be bringing.
Did that kind of, have like a negative impact on you? I mean, did you start beating yourself up over it?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think at the time it kind of like scared me off of improv. I remember there was like a particular show where I like joined them, and in the second half we were doing like a montage, which is just a run of open scenes. You can like kind of do whatever you want, and like you can do sweeps and tags, and you're in charge of like how the pace of the show is going, and also you're in charge of making sure that you step out for scenes.
Mhm.
And in one particular show, in the back half for like 20 minutes, I sat on the side and just watched my friends have a great time, and then afterwards I didn't step out for that, and I felt so bad that I ended up not coming out for bows and then leaving immediately afterwards. And the owners were very sweet, and they were like, hey, like that's okay. Like, don't worry about it. We're here to support you. But at the time I was like, I can never put myself in this position again. And I'm glad I got past it.
I mean, what was it that you needed to be able to get past that?
I think I needed to know that it was okay to try and to fail.
Mhm.
And I think like part of the way that I had been approaching my life before I really got super into improv was one of a lot of rules. Like because I was the observational person, I got very good at like trying to read people and understand like what they thought and like what they wanted, and then I was trying to like game those things. So it just meant that I felt like I was like almost playing a third person game where I'm the person who's like walking around, but I can't like access anything.
Hmm.
And I think like by doing improv and like learning about like this, just a slightly different approach to like ask myself to be vulnerable first and foremost, and to like ask myself to have fun first and foremost, I think just changed the way that I looked at the world, where instead of feeling like I was participating by taking in all the information and trying to make the best decision, now I feel like I'm just actively participating in it, knowing that the next decision is just the next thing that happens, whether that be a moment of silence or just to like continue to sit in a chair. Everything is like, to me at least, is fine as long as I'm aware of this current moment. If I don't have that, then everything can feel like a lot more, let's say, risky.
I mean, it sounds like a huge personality change in a very short period of time.
Oh, yeah.
Because, like we said, you went from there to Chicago, you went from Chicago to here, and when I asked you about it, you said, well, things tend to work themselves out once you get on the ground. That's remarkably different from the person that you described before getting on stage and failing. And that was just 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. I think I will also say my stand-up like ability at the time, I think like in 2019, since I was doing like a lot of festivals and different stuff, I did feel like a very strong performer. And I felt safe in that. Like when I was doing stand-up, I remember the first time I ever did it, it felt like it was the first time my brain worked right. Part of the reason I love the stage now is like it's the only time in my life that I feel like I'm not supposed to be anywhere else, or I don't need to be anywhere else. So I feel like in improv, I found out that I could let myself feel like that all the time. And the process for me is just like continuing to remind myself of that and continuing to build those skills and tools. So that way I know that everything's okay. Because everything is usually okay. Of course, that doesn't mean that bad things can't happen or this or that or setbacks. But rather than view a setback as like something that I'm like, I can never come back from this. Now they're just kind of like, what an interesting part of the story that is continuing to unfold. I can't wait to see how I get to turn this like raw material into like golden thread.
I mean, are you still at all the type of person who dwells on a bad performance?
Certainly, I'd say yes and no. I think yes, because I like to analyze a lot of different things. But no, because I think for the most part, the stage is a really safe place for me to like explore. I think it's the rest of my life that I have more anxiety about.
Like literally every other comedian.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. See, Christian Valentine was right. But yeah, I just, I really do feel like at peace with the stage. So then like when I do have a bad show or something like that, I can kind of like, at least now objectively kind of look at it and try to understand like what was the causes and like what things can I do a little differently, and like what is just like the nature of a performance to like allow yourself the safety to like have a bad show. I think that also means that like sometimes during a bad show or like a show that's not going like as precisely as I could hope for, it kind of allows me the frame of mind too to like shift gears, to say like, I'm like, okay, well right now this is how I'm approaching it. And if this isn't working, then I should just change my approach. Let's just see what else there is. And then it's just like dialing in till you find the audience. One of the things that I like talking about is this moment where you're with a crowd, especially for stand-up, that there's like a real silence in the room. And that real silence just means that everybody, to me at least, is aware of the show. They're like all really present in the moment. Because, sometimes there's like a little bit of chitter chatter here. And then like, like some people are like maybe like a little distracted, or maybe there's just like an energy in the room that is not necessarily a problem. It's just like, there's just like a lot of things going on. But yeah, sometimes during a show, I can feel a moment where like the crowd is galvanized. And then at that point you can do anything. Because everybody is like excited and everybody is participating.
I mean, I've watched some of your work as a stand-up, and I feel like, at least as a comedian, you're very patient with how you handle a story and how you let a story play out. I was also watching some of your work, I think probably from maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and I'm looking at it less like you're a joke a minute stand up and more like you'd be right at home on This Is Not Happening, the show that used to be, I don't know if it still is, but the show from Comedy Central that Roy Wood used to host and Ari before him. Is that kind of patience something that you had to develop as a stand up?
I remember in Charleston, we also did have a very funny comedy scene, small as it was, but uh, there was talk of like the joke a minute kind of thing. It's like how many laughs per minute are you getting? And I feel like anytime I hear people talk about like laughs per minute, I think that we kind of like miss the opportunity that like we are performers, like we are artists. We get to like explore all sorts of like parts of our humanity. So for me, at least with a crowd, it's less about like how many times can I get them to laugh, and it's more about like how can I give them something that they currently don't have. It's like they currently don't have my perspective in this world, and how do I like share with them who I am and like teach them like who like this person is. And through that, I think that's what causes laughter. It's like you learning something about something else and it registers inside of you. Josh Johnson has this great quote that he says, like part of the reason he loves comedy is like when he gets people to laugh for a minute, they are just themselves. There's nothing else that happens when you laugh. It's just like you come out. And I think like in that, guys, like as long as you can bring these people something like special and intimate and like part of like the current moment, I think that that's really important to me, versus like just trying to game them or game like the systems of comedy to like mine for things. Sometimes I like to explore.
Because you're also a little bit more, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're a little bit more towards the Armando style of improv comedy, right?
Yeah, I was actually on the Armando in Chicago.
Okay, so if you could explain that a little bit, because it's obviously more of like a story than a Whose Line Is It Anyway type of performance.
Yeah, so I'd say like I guess the two big schools of that are like short form versus long form improv. Short form is like Whose Line Is It Anyways, where you have like a prescribed game that you're trying to like play and focus on. So that might be like something like a new choice, or where like you have a bell and you just have to like replace the last line of dialogue, or lots of different like styles of approach that are just, exactly what it is your task is. And with that comes a lot of freedom. And that's kind of the fun of it. There's also Dropout TV right now that has like a lot of really great short form content. And then there's a different style of improv called long form improv, which is more like a play where the rules are more open. So in the Armando, you have a host come up and then they will tell us a story about their life or something, sometimes inspired by the audience, or sometimes they come like prepared. And then you have a cast of like 8 to 10 to 12 people who then come, and then we do like 25 minutes of improv. And then the person comes up and tells us another story, and then we do more improv, and then they come back up, and we just go back and forth like that, sharing the space.
And then did you learn about that in Georgia, or did you learn about that in Chicago later?
I learned about that in Georgia, I'd say.
Okay.
I also was doing a little bit of long form in Charleston, but usually just montage, which is just open scenes. So you can kind of like do anything. Mm-hmm. I had a friend from Charleston, this guy, Henry Riggs, who one time he was like a very tapped into the Chicago scene. And he told me that a montage was the hardest improv form to do. And I mentioned that to somebody else who was like an improviser, and they kind of laughed because they were like, you can do anything in a montage. But I realized like it's kind of hard to do anything when you don't even understand like how big anything is. So like doing a montage for me at the time in Charleston kind of felt like I was like, I don't know, like what things am I not allowed to do? And now looking at a montage, I'm like, ooh, today's the day where I get to explore parts of myself that I've never explored before.
Right.
And it's like really like teaching myself how to push against those walls to find out how much you can do.
So it was a breakup and an opportunity that came up like side by side that kind of brought you down to Georgia in the first place.
Yeah.
You ended up staying in Georgia for
about 2.5 years.
Okay. Was there ever a moment, especially in those first 6 months, where you were like, what the hell did I just do?
No. I feel like at the time it was like getting out of COVID lockdown. Mm-hmm. So anything felt better than what I was doing. And I just really loved Savannah. Savannah is like such a beautiful town, and the people were so nice. And it was like so nice to like be part of this community immediately, like coming down specifically for this theater. I feel like something that I've been fortunate to explore is like getting to a city and then like kind of making myself into like a part of it quickly. Mm-hmm. And in Savannah, I feel like that was like, yeah, the first time I really felt like, oh, I can go somewhere and I can still have these things that I care about. It's not the city of Charleston that gave me comedy. It's actually me who gives me comedy. So yeah, I just learned that as long as you like are pushing yourself in a way, you can always find more of the thing that you love.
So you kind of feel like you found yourself in Savannah.
Yeah.
And why, if you found yourself in Savannah, why make the jump to go to Chicago? Not to like denigrate my hometown or anything like that, which is a great hometown, but why would you, if you've, sort of figured out who you are and grew comfortable within yourself, and, and you sound like you're very fond of Savannah. That's what it sounds like. So why would you leave?
For a few reasons. Reason number one, working with your friends is sometimes really hard. So my relationship with that theater in Savannah didn't end super pleasantly, which was a shame. But they are still doing good, and I'm still very excited about that. And the second thing was that I had started thinking about leaving again because I felt like I had become a big fish in this like smaller pond, and I was ready to like explore again. And I met a guy from New York. His name is Kevin Scott. Kevin Scott performs on a team called Centralia. He teaches at the Pitt Theater in New York. He's very, very funny, travels around the world doing improv, doing workshops. He came to Savannah to do a workshop, and when I met him, I remember there was a day where it was just the two of us, and I was showing him around, and almost felt like out of the blue, he just looked at me and he was like, "Hey, Deshawn, I don't know why, but I think that you need to know this. If you want to see everything else that comedy has to show you, you have to be willing to put yourself first. And you might not think that you can do that because you live in this small town. But if you do want to see everything, you have to put yourself first. And if this is the life that you love, like you have a good life here. You get to work full time. You're surrounded by people that you enjoy. Savannah's beautiful. If that's what you want, great. But if you do want to see everything else, you have to put yourself first." And when he said that, I realized that I hadn't been doing that.
And in what way had you not been putting yourself first at that point?
I think like in that big game of before, like feeling like, yeah, that like me living in like that third person-y kind of world, I wanted people to like me and to like enjoy my time. And also knowing that because of like my skill set or whoever I was, people also wanted that.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like I needed to give that to them. So when I was living in Savannah, it just kind of felt like my task was to work for this theater and this community. And if I were to leave or to do anything that would jeopardize my time with them, then I would be hurting them in some way. And that's nothing to say about them. That's, just to say about me. But feeling that made me feel like, I couldn't put myself first, because by putting myself first, I would be greedy or like narcissistic or this or that. And at no point did I think that could just mean being confident in who you are and loving more of the thing that you want to see.
Was that also, did that sort of, way of looking at things, did that lead to, whatever happened between you and your friends who are running the theater?
I hope not.
What did happen?
What just happened was as we were working, it was a few different things. They had this like trolley tour that they used to do. They were working with a new company. I was not great at emailing. A few things happened where I think that they were just disappointed and they needed somebody who could like be there for them in the way that they like needed and expected.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I was doing a lot of stuff for like them, and it kind of just felt like I was like, oh, I think that I like have put so much effort into making your dreams happen, and I didn't realize like how hard they've been working to make their dreams happen. And because of that, I thought that everything that I was doing, they could see and they could notice. So it kind of just felt like when we were having these like arguments and different things, it kind of felt like I was like, oh, you're just people like me and you have a lot on your plate. And I'm trusting that you're going to like help me get everything that I need but you can't because you have to do what you need to do to get
Mhm.
everything that you need. Yeah, we had like a falling out with like one part of our business. Then I just switched to doing like some of the other parts of the business, and then just like over time, like there was like one day where I wasn't on a show that I was expecting to be on, and I remember asking about it, and he was like, "Oh, I don't even do things that way," and I was like, "Oh, well, you pay all of my bills right now," and then I was like, "I don't think that I can trust that you will always do what's right for me," and honestly, I think that's okay.
Mhm.
I think that's a lot to put on another person. And when I realized that, then that's kind of like taking into Kevin Scott's words. I was like, oh, this is the thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
like, no offense, but it sounds like
He
that's
gave me
when you
some
were putting
very good
yourself
advice.
first, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, did you ever repair the rift with these colleagues and friends of yours?
Unfortunately, I have not.
Hmm.
And that's also just something about me. I feel like in the last few years, moving around has been fun, but that also means like yeah, usually I like go to a new town and then immediately I'm like, all right, and now I'm here and I just have to really focus on being here.
Mhm.
So I would absolutely love to get the chance to reforge those connections. But at least for now, I think the thing that I want to do most is just be here and be present.
So, did you find Chicago, or did Chicago find you?
I found Chicago. So the first time I went to Chicago was in 2022. I went, I had started doing improv and never had viewed improv as something I seriously wanted to do. And then in Savannah, like with these wonderful people, gave me, the keys to the kingdom. And then I was like, oh, I want to learn more. So I went and did a 1 week intensive at the Nuanced Theater. And that's where I met Mick Napier. And just, I feel like I learned so much. And like, it was also just interesting. Um, I feel like at the theater, I had become like a pretty proficient improviser. And I think that was kind of hard to admit. Um, there's a book that I love that's called The Inner Game of Tennis.
Mhm.
And in the back of that book, they start talking about these like different games that you might play like in your real life. And one of the games that it mentions is the idea like if you are a community person and you want to play for like community, then to like do your best might be something that you're not willing to do because that might isolate you from the community.
Hmm.
And I
What an
remember,
interesting perspective,
yeah.
right?
But when I read it, it really hit home.
Mm.
And thinking about like my first time at this intensive in Chicago this 1 week, on our first day, this very sweet man, I do a scene with him, and at the end of the scene, they're like, "How was the scene?" Like you always have to ask. And his first words are, he was like, "Oh my gosh," he was like, "It was so easy," and it's because Deshawn just like made everything so simple. And all of my friends were like, absolutely. And then the whole week, I kept getting like these things and like having these conversations with like improvisers well above my stature. And like, I feel like I've gotten a lot of opportunity through comedy. And sometimes it has felt like I don't always know why.
Hmm.
I don't know what it is about me that like can draw people in this way. And I'm always very grateful for it. But sometimes it just feels like it can be hard, and like learning how to become okay with that and to think of that like not as a danger or a risk or something scary, just like viewing it as like, this is part of the way that I get to explore the world. And my task isn't to know like why this is. My task is just to use as much of it as I can.
But why wouldn't you be okay with that?
I think it's just like a little bit of my like personal anxieties.
Mhm.
It's I think growing up I was a little afraid of becoming like a narcissist because I maybe had some of that in like my life, and
Some
I
of that you mean from other people in your life,
yeah,
or yeah.
other people in my life, hopefully. uh, and yeah, it was something that I was really scared of. The idea that like you could commit yourself to something that you love and that was okay. And that seems like a silly thing to say, but at the time growing up, I think it was just really hard. It was really hard to like want something. It was really hard for me to let myself do comedy. It was really hard to like be confident. It was really hard to like speak vulnerably and honestly about who I was and what I believed. I think it was really improv that showed me that all those things were okay. And as soon as I had all those things, it just like made me start looking back at my life in a lot of ways. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, like over the course of a month, 2 months, something just really shifted. And then I felt like myself.
Is part of it maybe that you didn't have anyone in your network growing up who was a performer, or anybody in your network that you were able to look up to who was doing kind of this, that you kind of, just like you moved over here to Amsterdam on your own, that also you kind of wandered out into this profession on your own?
Yeah, I'm sure that definitely had an effect. I think, yeah, it's just a bunch of different things. Like kind of like thinking about growing up, moving from New York to South Carolina. Like you see like the bigness of New York, and then I remember driving down. Just felt like the isolation of like not having like so many people around you, and it just kind of like it was like a little scary to like lose like so much of like this humanity. And of course, like Charleston is really beautiful and it's like a really lovely town, so I had a really wonderful experience there. But I feel like that also is like part of that thing. It's like to raise yourself up out of the group is to isolate yourself. And I think in New York, at least in my brain, it's like easier to be as much as you want because everybody is as much as you want. But Charleston's like a slower pace, and it's not every day that you see somebody who's like completely themselves and gregarious. It's like it's a lot of clicks. It's a lot of like politeness. It's a lot of like bless your hearts. And all that just means to say it's like, hey, it's actually not safe for you to be who you want to be. And the first time that you get to see that, it has an effect on you, like I think that's like why people love going to see concerts. Because you get to see like a performer on stage. And when you're there, you see like somebody who is like at the height of themselves. It's like their height of their powers. My buddy in Savannah used to say. And when you see that, you feel that in yourself and you say like, oh, I can also be myself. I can also do that. So I didn't grow up like seeing a lot of like art and seeing like a lot of plays and going to music venues and doing these things. Mostly I just was hanging out with my friends, playing video games, which I love. Wistfully daydreaming about what a life in stand-up could be like. And gotta say, better than I thought.
And, you kind of, like you said, you kind of discover yourself or get comfortable with who you are in Georgia. And then you start to gain more confidence in being the type of performer that you want to be while you're on stage in Chicago. But that also starts to bring magic into the picture as part of your performance. So, how does that end up integrating into kind of all this work that you do?
I think there's a few interesting things about like performing magic. I think one of the things that was certainly a helpful part of my Chicago existence was when you're a performer, it's really hard to show somebody your job. Like you have to convince them to come to a show. And the only way that you can really get somebody out is like, am I cool enough? Do I have like a nice enough vibe that somebody wants to spend more time with me? But with magic, I can always have like a deck of cards in my pocket, and then you can like
obviously, literally,
right?
Yeah.
And when you have that like time with somebody to show them a few magic tricks, like it immediately shows them like, oh, this is really fun to like watch this person perform. So that's like one thing. But the other side of it is when you're doing magic, it is all practice. It's like if you get a magic trick wrong, it's like 30 seconds of your life. You can do another one. And when you're like just going through and, you show somebody something and there's part of the trick where neither of you know if it's going to work. I do everything that I'm supposed to do. I follow like all my little like tools and techniques. But at the end, I don't know that we're successful until I ask the question of, is that your card?
Right.
And when you say yes, then we have a success. And if you say no, then we still have a trick that's happened. And usually then you just do it again. So looking at that like style of approach to performing, it just means that like everything's okay. You can always try something, and if it doesn't work, try it again, or just redirect and see if you can like still get something beautiful out of it. And I think that you always can. That, and then I start bringing it onto the stage and stand up. I put it into like a show at Second City where I was doing a show called the Black Excellence Show. Brought some audience members up to do magic tricks and to have them complement each other. So I think just looking at magic, it is an opportunity for me to just show one more thing that I think is really special, like that article of surprise, that like the idea that the world has more to show you than you might be aware of.
Is there something about doing, I mean, you said that Nick kind of, drew it out of you a little bit and kind of, helped you foster this interest. I'm also wondering, is there something about an audience in Chicago that made it possible for you to do this versus, let's say, an audience in Georgia?
Absolutely. So Chicago is, as they like to say, the birthplace of close-up magic. The style of magic is sometimes called Chicago style, especially in Chicago. So in Chicago currently, there's like a big magic resurgence going on. So there's the Chicago Magic Lounge, there's the Rap City Theater, there's like another theater that was just getting built downtown, which is like one of the like a huge magic venue. So in like terms of cities in the states that have magic, it's like certainly there's lots of magic around, but Chicago is like in the top 5, top 3 maybe. And that's just kind of like a wild place to like be and to see. And when I was in Chicago, people, since I was doing a lot more magic, just like for friends and stuff like that, people started asking me to come to their shows and to do magic. And because Chicago has so many shows, there's like lots of magic opportunities. And because I'm like, well, I mean, hey, yeah, why not? I haven't done that before. Right. So then just started doing that. And then I think the largest magic show that I did was I did 2 30-minute sets for the University of Iowa. And that was like the most money I'd ever gotten paid to perform like a single performance. And I got that through Gretchen Ang, who's the producer for the Armando. And like she also produces for a show called Devil's Daughter, which is really a fantastic improv team. But it was like, all these little things just happen to line up. And like when you need them, or when you put out like that energy into the world that you want to see, like, hey, I don't know if anybody's interested to see more of this, but I have something that I'd like to share. Then people sometimes will help you share more to understand.
And then, so how is it that you got found in Chicago and asked to come out to Amsterdam? Because they, from what I understand, Boom Chicago typically does auditions here.
Yes.
So how did they find you there?
So in Chicago, so when I got to Chicago, I got there in 2023 for that, for the IO's intensive. And then that just started a really crazy series of events. But I stayed in Chicago for an extra month. During that extra month, I started doing a few shows around town. Had rekindled my friendship with Mick Napier and Jen Estelin, and had gotten the chance to audition for a show at Second City called the Bob Curry Fellowship, which is like an 8-month experience where they like train you, and then there's like a run of shows, or maybe like, let's say 4 or 5 months. Then I had met a performer named Jules Morales, who at the time was on main stage at Second City. We had a mutual friend who I had met in Savannah, of all places. All these people together kind of like gave me the groundwork that I needed. So the first big show that I did in Chicago was for Bob Odenkirk. He was producing a show with his son, Nate, at the Annoyance, and they were looking for like student like performers who were like part of the Annoyance. And even though I had been there for, at that point, 6 weeks, they had recommended me for it. And then I got selected.
That's huge. I mean, for people who don't know who Bob Odenkirk is, I mean, Better Call Saul, Breaking Bad, Nobody more recently. And I mean, that's huge to be on, the guy's very well known in the Chicago comedy scene, but, now well known, all over from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, I couldn't really believe when it happened. I was still like looking for work. I I remember I was walking down next to the Chicago River. Had talked to these people about potentially becoming an architectural tour guide. Had met the owner, and he was like, "Hey, actually, we need a bartender. Would you want to like work with us?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I have a job now. I'm going to be able to make a little bit of money."
Right.
And then I'm walking back to the place I'm staying, and then I get a call from Jen, and she's like, "Hey, I just recommended you for this thing. Would you be available to like rehearse these 4 days and then do these 2 shows?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." She's like, "I can't tell you anything else." And then Mick was the monologist at the at the Armando at IO, and then I saw them there, and Jen's like, "It's for Bob Odenkirk, and they're gonna have you." So then I get the chance to do these rehearsals with Odenkirk. At the time, I was like kind of living out of like Airbnbs and like friends' couches and like staying at hostels and like using my car. And then I lost my car keys and most of my clothes were in there. So then I had like 3 sets of clothes. And on the day that I had to do the Bob Curry callbacks, so it was like I auditioned, got the callback for the very next day. So I did the Bob Curry Fellowship callback. Left Second City, went to the Annoyance to rehearse for the Odenkirk show. We did the show that night, and then 2 of the cast members of the show, one of them is currently on the FX show Adults, Amita Rao, and she ends up, they're like telling me, they're like, "Hey, our agent wants to meet you." And I was like, "Oh, okay." It's this guy named Bob Schroeder, and I have this like I meet 3 Bobs in a day, and it just like really lets me stay in Chicago. So I end up getting the Bob Curry Fellowship. I get the agent, and I have like this like experience where I get to meet like Bob Odenkirk, and that also he's like such a nice guy. And yeah, I remember during the first of those like rehearsals having a friend, like having people tell me, they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're so good at this." And at the time, I was still like fresh from Savannah, where like the idea of putting myself first is like this kind of new thing that I'm trying to like promote. So to have all these people tell you that like, "Hey, we really appreciate what you're doing," kind of made me more suspicious than anything. I was like, "What's going on? How is this possible?" And yeah,
I mean, because you're like literally tripping into opportunities, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like
that is sometimes how it feels. But I think now the way that I kind of see that is that part of my skill set, I think, is like by following those like threads of like imagination and like following those like threads of opportunity and just like being open to the world and seeing like what is the next thing that's going to happen.
Right.
And I think like that is like part of that, it's I'm chill. I got a good vibe, and I like work really hard. And I think when people see that, they like that, and they want to like spend more time with that, and they want to like help me get more of that thing. And I think that's like been the story for a long time.
And so what was it, that actually brought you out to Amsterdam then? Because you get this agent. Was the contact from your agent to Boom Chicago, or what was it?
The contact was that Stacy Smith, as I understand, and I could be wrong.
Who was here just a couple of episodes? Yeah,
that's right. We love Stacy. Stacy calls me to not calls me. Stacy reaches out to some of the artistic directors in Chicago to see like, "Hey, is there anybody that we should be looking at?" And they got a list of people that they were considering, and somehow I end up on that list. And one of the former cast members, Louis Cordon, hits me up and says, on Instagram, we had become friends. We had done like some shows together and stuff. And Louis like, "Hey, I don't know if you are familiar with Boom Chicago, but I just got off a video call, and they have your name as a list of people that they're considering. Is this something that you'd be interested in?" And literally before I had come to Chicago, I talked to another friend. I feel like I'm dropping a lot of names.
A lot of names.
I'm like, my memory today. This guy, Eric Honeycutt, who was the director of IO Training Center West, lived in Savannah for a little bit, or for a long time. Really phenomenal improviser, great human. He tells me, I'm like, what could I do if I go to Chicago? And he says, you could maybe do Second City and you could maybe do Boom Chicago. And when I was in Chicago, I told one of the director of the training center or the artistic director of IO, my like first week, she was like, what do you want to do while you're here? I'm like, I'd like to do Second City. I'd like to do Boom Chicago. And in my time in Chicago, I did Second City. And then when the Boom Chicago thing happened, I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that this might be about to happen. And yeah, sure enough, it was like 5 days. Louis hits me up. We meet. We talk about the goods and the bads and like what the experience was like. I'm interested. Sunday, I send over my headshot and resume. Monday, I get an email back from Stacy. She says the owners would like to have an interview. They schedule the interview for the very next day. I get onto the phone. 10 a.m. Chicago time. We talk for an hour. It's scheduled right before their monthly magic show, which was very kismet. And then about an hour after my phone, or 2 hours after we get off the phone, I'm like calling my family and friends and being like, this just happened. This is crazy. And I get a call from the Netherlands and they offer me the job. Then I have to tell all of my friends that I'm leaving. That was really hard.
Right.
A lot of my friends and like the projects that I was working on, like kind of galvanize around me, and like we start just like producing all these things, and it becomes this really beautiful, wonderful time of a lot of like goodbyes and like.
How much time did you have between when you got the job and when you actually moved?
I think it was maybe a month and a half, 2 months.
So like 6 weeks to kind of wrap everything up, basically.
Yeah. And to get a passport.
Yeah, right.
Which I was like, I don't know if it's going to happen, but it all worked out. Yeah.
And now you've been here, just under 6 months now. And what's your opinion of it? I mean, aside from, it's a little bit more than bicycles and cheese. So,
oh, dang it. My two things I was about to mention.
So, what's your impression of Amsterdam now that you've been living here for a half year?
I think Amsterdam is really beautiful. I think it's really lovely. I love that the sun is up until like 10 p.m. during the summer. That's really nice. It's been, I hear, uncharacteristically nice weather this year.
Very. Yeah.
But I think the people are just really nice and kind. And I think like performing at Boom has been great because, you get dropped into, I think, an ideal situation for having to move to, a country you've never been to. You're surrounded by like people who want to know more about like the people that they're around. That's like kind of the beauty of the improvisers. So I really love Amsterdam. I think it's really, really nice.
Are you doing any stand-up here also, or is it pretty much mostly just improv?
Doing some stand-up here as well. We do stand-up shows. We have Comedy Embassy, which is usually hosted by Matt Castelvi. And there's like
friend of the pod.
I won't stop naming names. And you have like all these really wonderful stand-ups around town. So yeah, I've been able to do more stand-up than I have in recent years, which has been really great for the soul.
So you're now here. Your goal going to Chicago had been Second City and Boom Chicago in Amsterdam, and you're now here in Amsterdam doing that. What's your goal? Where are you going to go from here?
I think my goal for at least in Chicago was like certainly this would be like a cool opportunity to get to do Boom. But one of the ways that I like to look at goals is I like to have my goals kind of like in my like past. It's like my goal I think now is to do something that I find as meaningful and to do something that matters. Mm-hmm. And I think over the course of my life, I've done a lot of things that I think were meaningful and things that mattered, at least to me. And because of that, now, instead of like saying like, what's the next thing that I'm going to get to do? I just get to do everything. It's like the framework has already been completed. The goal was to do something that felt impactful. And when you've done that, then you just get to do everything else.
I'm really hoping that you're not sort of waiting for the other shoe to drop or something like that, that you're, able to value these opportunities that you've got, and that, that you can accept that it's your talent or, your stage presence that has been able to kind of, get you through and build up your career over these years.
Yeah, I think that like waiting for the other shoe to drop was like part of my Chicago experience. It was like what I used to think of it was like that performing and like living a life of comedy would kind of feel like flying. And when I was in Chicago, I was like, this is it. This is what I thought it was. I was flying. But I would still feel like that anxiety of like, oh, when is this shoe going to drop? Like, what happens if I mess this up? And then I like realized a little bit for myself that by like changing that reference point just a little bit, it provided like a little bit of freedom. So the metaphor I used for a long time was that I felt like I was ready to fly. I was ready to pursue comedy. I was ready to like give my all. And I was holding onto the ground to keep from falling into the sky. And moving to Chicago felt like letting go. Mm-hmm. And letting myself fly. And then I was like, but how do I stay in the air? Mm-hmm. And flipping that, like that metaphor, at least a little bit from like, it wasn't important that I was flying. It was important that I let go. Mm-hmm. And I think that's like part of what makes it okay to like perform. It's like, you have to be willing to let go of everything in a moment. You have to like continue to let go every single second. You have to like let go. You have to, I was talking to somebody about this. In Buddhism, they say to like breathe in like reality and to breathe out reality. It's like breathe in the current moment and like breathe out the current moment. It's like when you are performing, or at least when I'm performing, I want to be like as close to the current moment as I can. So that means I have to constantly be letting go of the last moment, and I have to constantly be letting go of like what I'm worried about in the future. And I have to let myself just like exist in that little pocket.
Mm. So, for the people who actually want to see you on stage, where can they find you in the present moment?
In the present moment, you can find me at Boom Chicago, baby. I'll be at Boom Chicago pretty much every Wednesday through Sunday from now until the foreseeable future, I suppose. Yeah.
And people can find you on Instagram and see where you're performing there.
That's right. Well, yes, I'm not posting very much on Instagram, but please do follow me there anyways. I post, there's some good photos. But yeah, you can find me on Instagram, Mason_SAN. It's MASON, Mason_SAN.
That's so cool. Thank you so much for joining and for taking the time out of here. And I wish you all the best in Amsterdam. Welcome to the city.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, totally. Damn Yankee is produced in partnership with NL Times, the top choice for English language news from the Netherlands. Founded nearly 15 years ago, NL Times grew to become the #1 site for information about this country, featuring more news stories every day of the week than any other website. Keep tabs on the latest top stories and breaking news from across the entire country, not only in Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and The Hague. Find out more at nltimes.nl. Damn Yankee is an NL Times podcast. The show was created by me and Peach Rizzo. Peach Rizzo produced this episode, and Marcus Engel edited the episode.